Can I retire at 65 with $700,000 saved for retirement and protect against long-term care? That is what Joan is asking. Joan is a cancer survivor. She saw her husband, who has passed away, go through chronic and assisted into long-term care. And she understands the mental anguish and the cost that it takes to cover long-term care. So she comes to me asking for long-term care insurance. I say, hey, Joan, first of all, you can't qualify for long-term care insurance because you're a cancer survivor. They won't underwrite you. And the second reason why I don't think it makes the most sense in protecting your overall assets, not just for you, but also for the next generation. So let me show you a way that I help clients protect against long-term care. So you ready to look at that? Okay, so Joan has $700,000. So that's right here. We have $400,000 for long-term care protection. We have $300,000 for retirement income, all right? Now, we also have a home that is paid off for $400,000. She lives down in the Fort Myers area. So we're going to give the home a rate of return, and what we're going to do is we're just going to give it a 1% rate of return, meaning we're going to show the home appreciating at 1% at every interval. Now, the reason I use 1% is because I have no idea what the real estate market is going to look like over the next 30 years. So if we put in 1% and it gets better than that, that's great. Joan's in Florida. Our market in Florida is crazy, okay? So we'll use 1% as a healthy and conservative number. Now, we're going to look at long-term care protection, and we're going to put $400,000 aside, and we're going to use a plain vanilla, very boring annuity. Now, the reason we're going to use an annuity is because we want to use something that's not going to have any risk, and it's not going to have any fees. We're actually going to use a fixed indexed annuity. It has no risk and no fees, and it has a 4% guarantee. So it's got a 4% guarantee on it every year. And the reason we like the guarantee is because we want something that if Joan has to get to it for long-term care, she knows that it's growing at a guaranteed rate and she can pull that money out. Now, the 4% is a floor. It could make more than that based on the S&P 500. It's a indexed annuity. It's indexed to the market, but I'm going to show you a 4% rate of return, just the minimum. Now, keep in mind before you start commenting that I'm an annuity salesman and we're trying to sell annuities. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that's not who I am. That's not what I do. What we try to do is take tools from the toolbox to fit what the client's needs are. So if you come to me at CarMax and you're saying, hey, I have a family of 4 with 3 kids, that's me with 2 dogs, and I try to sell you at CarMax a convertible Mustang, I'm going to walk out. No, I need a minivan. It's the same thing we're doing for Joan. We're trying to assess what she needs, and I'm making recommendations as a fiduciary based on those needs. Now, she could easily say to me, I don't want that. And I'll say, okay, plan B. Okay, so we're not arguing about things. We're just looking at tools. So we're going to use an annuity for that. The second set of money is the $300,000 that she needs for retirement income. Now, her expenses are about $3,049 a month. Okay, these are her expenses. And those are going to grow at a 3% annual inflation rate. Now, we've broken this down monthly, right? Because if you go to Costco, the cost of avocados at Costco are more expensive today than they were yesterday. So we're going to use a 3% annualized inflation rate for her expenses. Her Social Security is $24.26, okay? And she's already claiming it at 65. Now, the money in the market, this $300,000, is going to get a 5% rate of return. The reason we're going to use a 5% rate of return is because it is a very conservative rate of return when you look at the S&P 500. Now, the S&P 500 since 1950 has averaged about 10%. It's 8% with inflation. So we're going to back down 3% to 5%. The other reason why we could be a little bit more growth oriented, maybe not a 4% rate of return, is because we have this money set aside that's safe. So we can be a little bit more growth oriented over here. Again, it's based on the client's risk capacity. The risk capacity means that what your portfolio can endure risk-wise to accomplish the retirement income that you need. I call it the guardrail rule. We did a financial EKG for Joan. That's our comprehensive financial plan that goes over the 6 major areas of your retirement. And in our financial EKG, we found out what her rate of return that she needs to earn for the rest of her life to never run out of money. Well, in this case, it's 5%. Essentially, based on the EKG, at 5%, this 300,000 is at zero. We still have this 400,000 growing at 4%. So she still has plenty of money plus her house. So what that means from a guardrail standpoint, if the miles per hour is 5 and you go 15, you could go over the guardrail, right, and derail your retirement. But if you go 2 miles an hour, you're not going fast enough to get to where you need to go, which is why we need the financial EKG to find out exactly what your miles per hour are. Exactly what we're trying to do, guardrail rule, right? So she's got $3,049 of expenses, $2,426 in Social Security, which means we need $623 from her investments each month, growing at 3% annualized. So from 65 to 70, her $300,000 grows to $342,298. Now her expenses have grown from $3,049 through $3,581. That's at 3%, right? That's that inflation that we all feel right now. But her Social Security has grown from $2,426 to $2,756. This is the cost of living adjustment for Social Security. Now keep in mind, let me say this. This cost of living adjustment for Social Security is not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed, okay? If you talk to your grandparents, like my grandma's 82, ask her what her COLA increases were like for the last 10 years up until 2022, 2023, 2021-ish, right? What were your COLA increases? Barely anything. So we're calculating a Social Security COLA increase of about 2.5%, which is the national average or the long-term average since about 1974 when COLA was instituted. But keep in mind, COLA is not guaranteed. But we're going to show you 2.5%. So COLA's at $2,756, $825. That's money that we need out of our investments at this point. Now, $342 at 70. At 75, we have $373,849. Our expenses have grown to $4,206. So you see that? We've grown about $1,000, $1,200 from 65 to 75. That's inflation, right? You know, I always say God's greatest gift outside of Jesus Christ is compound interest. Well, that's working in the positive, right? Inflation's compound interest working in the negative. And so we've got to look at this and say, what's our cash flow going to be with inflation? Where are we going to get our retirement income from? Luckily for Joan, right, we're showing these projections at a pretty low rate of return. Now, her Social Security has grown to $3,130, which means now we need about $1,000 a month or $12,000 a year-ish, somewhere around there, of retirement income, which we have $389,976. Now, here's what I want you to look at. At 80 is when most people will need long-term care, somewhere around 80. Can't promise you that 80 is your magic number, but 80 is when you're going to need some home health care, assisted living, long-term care, whatever. So the asset that we've set aside for Joan, just at a 4% guarantee, is at $720,000. That's $720,000 she can use for home health care, assisted living. Remember the Fidelity survey we did at the beginning? The average 65-year-old is going to need about $156,000 in healthcare expenses. She's got plenty. Now, here's the thing. What if Joan never needs it? What if she never needs long-term care, only needs a portion of this? And let's say she dies at 80 years old. What goes to the kids? $720,000, $389,000, and $467,000 home. That goes to the kids. What if we were paying into long-term care insurance for the last 20 years and you die? None of that goes to kids, right? So we're trying to set up assets that aren't just benefiting an insurance company, but benefit us and the next generation. I know that you probably don't want to leave any money to your kids. You're going to spend it all. You're going to bounce that last check on the day you die. I know. I've talked to you. But we also want to be smart about our money, right? A wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. We want to be wise people. So we're trying to protect our money, not just from giving it to our kids, but also protecting it for long-term care or assisted living. And this is a way that we can do that without having to pay enormous long-term care insurance premiums. So I hope this has helped you. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye.